that we may be wrong about a few things, and we have to be open to the idea of having someone share what they're seeing.
Man, what is going on, guys? We haven't seen each other in a minute, but I'm happy to be coming to you for this conversation we are about to have. You guys know no label defines me. We talk about all the things that are the dirty words, the things that people don't want to talk about, and often those are the things that hold us back. And we are diving in to a conversation about love, sex, disability. Wait, is that word even allowed to be in conversation with the other two? I think that is a big thing for a lot of our community and society as a whole. And I'm joined by Dr. Michelle Fynan. And Michelle, first thing I want to talk about is we're recording this on the 20th, and it's actually International Day of Acceptance or something like that. So
Nice.
I'm curious, when you think of the word acceptance, what does that look like for you?
Immediately, I'm thinking about acceptance of self, um, appreciating, I think, not only the light, but the dark too. That was certainly what 2020 brought me to my knees on. And I think that acknowledging that there is the bad, and that doesn't negate the light, and that it just shows how much more important the light is. So accepting all of the pieces. And I think that sometimes for people with disabilities, that can be a struggle. It can be a struggle for everyone, but there's an additional layer when it comes to adding that additional aspect to it.
And I would say for the audience, how has that concept played a role in your own journey and where you are today and what you talk about with people?
Hmm. So a little bit about me. I guess that would be a great place to start. Um, so, as a woman with a disability, I have osteogenesis imperfecta, which is quite the long name. It's more known as a brittle bone disease, but it doesn't just affect the bones. It's really anything in your body that has collagen. So it affects the entire body, but most notably, it's called brittle bone disease, and it's classified as a rare disorder. Um, and I had that disability coming out of the birth. I
Mhm.
was a spontaneous genetic mutation, which those who know me, they're not shocked by that at all. Just had to be. I fully embodied that. But because of that, disability was not previously a part of my family. And it wasn't very prevalent in not only my family, but the communities that they were a part of. I was the only person with a physical disability that was visual anyway at my school, all throughout, from first grade until my senior year of high school. So there was a loneliness. So I, of course, connect with all of the material that you talk about. So I didn't have an acceptance of myself. I think I did to some degree, but not when it came to who I was as someone who is disabled. And I was very shy, which, again, another aspect of me that people who know me now, they're like, yeah, right. Like that wasn't true. But I was painfully shy. Um, and I know that a lot of that had to do with how I viewed myself as someone with a disability and who was a wheelchair user. I was using a wheelchair for mobility until my junior year of high school. Then I started using a walker, and now I'm not using any assistance. So I've also kind of danced in that world of visible versus invisible disability. And it's been just a wild ride. And self-acceptance because of that has been a wild ride. And it really took me getting to a level of self-acceptance in order to find and attract the love that I was looking for and the relationships that I was looking for, and, you know, the people that I wanted to be with in these relationships. Because before I had that acceptance, I was not having that and that thing that I wanted so badly. So I think that it's such an important part, that acceptance of self, when you're going into, the dating scene, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Like everything, even with the stuff that I talk about loneliness, it all goes back to self. And look, it's a journey. I think if we're you get anything from what Michelle just said, it's absolutely a journey, and that awareness of where you're at in the moment is key. So I'm curious, if I'm a person who's sitting there and I'm saying, that is all fine and dandy, right? Um, you made it happen for you, but I don't see a way to make it happen for me. From your personal experience of making it happen for you, what's something somebody could take as that first step? Like, what's the first step you remember where you did this, or somebody said something to you and it started changing for you?
I can big time relate to someone who's sitting there being like, cute, but that's your story. Like, you're this, you're that, or I have this, or I have that. And that's why, these are my reasons that I'm holding on too tightly as to why love isn't in the cards for me. And I, without a doubt, believed that. And I think that speaks to, you know, part of the reason that is because the topics of love and disability, you don't hear about it a lot. And whether or not it was like specifically said to me, which I don't recall that it ever was, but I believed, because it wasn't a conversation that was had with me, it was never like, oh, Michelle, tell me about your boyfriends too, or like, what's going on with you.
Yeah.
That was never addressed to me. So I always, believed that, oh, what that tells me is there's not a space at the table for me at this conversation. It's thought that this isn't something that's going to happen for me. So then I went along with that, um, and fully embodied it too. Probably to look at me, I wasn't approachable because of that, because I was like, no one's gonna approach me, like I really believed that. And if people did, I never believed it was about a romantic interest. I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Did you need help with something? Did you need to talk? Did I need to help you?"
They're like,
Um,
no, you're hot. I wanted to come talk to you.
right. And they're looking back, there were a couple of times where people were blatant, and that was truly the only way that I would even understand it. And then I was like, "Oh, like, they don't know. I don't want to like break their hearts." But it was almost like in my head, I was like, listen, I have a disability. So like, you're not, now that you know that, the exit is just right over here. Let me help you along your way.
Yeah.
So I can, when people say it's not for me, or they're having a loss of hope, like I embodied that feeling. So I could feel it in my bones when that's said. And I can say that I can appreciate where you're at. The only thing that changed was I still have a disability. Like, that didn't go away.
No.
I know. The only thing that changed was my mindset around it. That was the only thing. And because of my mindset shift, it shifted my energy. I was open to the possibility. And that's where I would say we need to get, if we're embodying that hopelessness, just that small seed of like, okay, I can agree that there might be a shred of possibility that I'm wrong. And when I was
Ooh.
open to that, that's when things shifted. And I think that that's so important with any shift you're going to make.
That's just the way in which you frame that is so powerful, because you said there was a possibility I was wrong. And we want to be right so badly that it doesn't even matter if it's if it's hurting us to
Yeah,
be right. We want to prove our story right.
right.
Absolutely. Um, so I'm curious, in this space and all the time that you've been talking about it and working with people, what's one thing right now that you wish more people would talk about, but they're not?
I think that that mindset part, maybe, of where they are stuck and getting in their own way. Because I love what you said, how it's like we want to be right. And I think too, it's about us. And I truly believe that we are the experts of ourselves, right? Anyone with a rare disease knows that, because you've met a ton of doctors who maybe didn't even know what you were talking about when you were sharing your experience. So, you know that you're the expert of you. And I truly believe that when I'm working and with anyone. But I think we do have to be open to the idea that we may be wrong about a few things, and we have to be open to the idea of having someone share what they're seeing, you know, because other people can see things about us that
Hmm.
we may never see, we may never be open to seeing or believing, for that matter. So just that part of it, um, I think is so important.
Yeah, it made me, so I've written a couple of things down, and what that point kind of made me think of is like whenever I think of disability, where we are now currently as a society, especially in this topic, I think a big barrier is we just don't see being a romantic interest modeled in any form of, whether it's in the media, on the TV shows that we watch. I I only remember one show, honestly, that I remember, and it was Baywatch, when a dude had a spinal cord injury, and that was
Right.
the only show I remember ever touching the topic. And like for me, the thing that kind of brings up is when we get told things like, "Oh yeah, you're pretty good looking for a guy with a disability. If you just
Right.
didn't have a disability, that would make it okay." And that's not the right
Right.
person for me or for the person that's being told that, but that's something that I've been told multiple times.
You've been told it multiple times.
Yeah.
Wow. And what was that like?
I'm like, well, there's the good old friend rejection again.
Right. Right. So then when these things happen multiple times, what do we tell ourselves? It must be true.
Yeah, 100%. And
I'm right.
it's crazy because you can know intellectually that it's not, but the more you get told, the more it starts becoming that belief system.
So what do we do then when we have the proof, because that's what we tell ourselves
Yep.
that it is, right? So
Yep.
doesn't that make the shift that much harder? Because we're no longer like, we feel like it's not just us, it's everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone's telling me this, so I'm right.
Even if it's just 3 people, because 3 people is not a lot.
That's right there. And you said it at the very beginning. Those are not my people.
Yeah.
And I think that if we don't know that there's people out there that are not going to be all about us, and we're not okay with that, then that's also like step 2. Like, be open to the fact that you're wrong. Be open to the fact that the entire world is not now your dating playing field.
Yeah.
It's not for anyone.
Yeah.
It's not. No matter how gorgeous and amazing and whatever it is, you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea
Yeah.
or coffee in my situation. But so we have to acknowledge both of those things, and then also acknowledge that, okay, if that is true, can I maybe believe that there are people that are out there for me?
Yeah. And
in
what
in
would
how
that look
many?
like?
Right. And that you've led us now to the next part, because what would that look like if you aren't clear on what it is that you're looking for, just in life in general? How are you going to find it? How are you going to find it?
Yeah.
And you know I back in the day, I was on, what was it? It was like Live Journal, I think, or
Oh man. All right.
you know, and I had these followers that were really just my friends, and I made this list of all of, like, just get fed up one day when you're just like, I'm going to be alone forever. Like, no, I'm not. You're having this battle, this internal battle. And I made this list of everything that I wanted in a person that I wanted to share my heart with, my life with, all of these things. So I had clearly already had that agreement with myself that I might be wrong about being alone forever. You could tell by my actions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then I'm, acknowledging that, okay, it's not just everyone that I want to date. I want to date a specific type of person. Okay, let me get clear on who this person is. And Nathan, I wrote out like a list of over 100 things. I was
Whew.
like, and this is what else I'm gonna deserve, right?
Yeah.
And I got super clear, and then the people that were crossing my path were getting clearer too. It's not like magic. It happens that way. When If we were to sit here and talk about yellow cars, yellow cars, yellow cars, you're going to go out and you're actually going to find yellow car. You're going to
Yeah.
see it more. It's the same thing.
You're gonna be
Same
like,
thing.
why did I start talking about yellow cars?
You're
Uh
welcome, everyone. And now when you think of yellow cars, we're going to link that to who do I want and who do I want to share my space with?
yeah, I think that's actually a really cool space to be in, right? Because cars come in different models. They come with all these different packages. Like, do you want somebody with a roll-up window? I know those are good, far and few between these days, but do you want that? Do you
Right,
want all electric everything? Maybe
right,
you need something with hand controls and modifications. Like, I think
right.
that's a beautiful
I
example
love
to
that.
use.
I love where you took that, because it doesn't say that there's anything wrong with a car that's blue, right?
Mhm.
Or that doesn't have, all of the hand controls, but is that your car if it doesn't have hand controls and you need that to drive? That's not your car,
You better
and
not
that's
be on the road with
okay,
me. I'd be pissed.
right?
Yeah.
So it's not your car, and that's okay. Can you test drive the cars? Yes, but do you want to live in like test drive mode? because you don't have any idea what you're looking for? No. And sometimes we do have to test drive things in order to find that out. And we have to put ourselves out there that we can really run with this, Nathan, because if you want a car, but you never go to a dealership or you never pull up an online website, are you going to find what you're looking for? A car is not going to drive itself to your driveway.
Not yet, but yes.
Not yet. It might someday. And then my whole
then the whole analogy is ruined. But yes,
done.
You have to go to the dealership. And I like, this is so interesting that this is where this went, because I remember when I was getting a new vehicle, I thought I wanted a truck. And I got in the truck, just sitting in the truck. I was like, yeah, nah, this isn't for me. This is not, it's not going to be comfortable for me. It's going to make me feel unsafe. And it's not going to bring the best out of me when I'm driving down the road.
Yeah. I have a story about cars since we're running with it here.
All right.
When I was 16, my parents said, we're going to buy you a car, and, you know, we will buy you a sports car. We'll buy you that sports car that you want. And they knew how to motivate me, obviously. And I was like, all righty, but your wheelchair won't fit in the trunk of the sports car that you're wanting here. And I was like, oh yes, it will. So I took that thing apart, like nut and bolt. This was back when they would let you, and I don't know if they still do that, but I haven't experienced it recently, where they let you like take the car home and drive it around. Like I didn't have anyone with me. So I sat in my driveway, I disassembled the wheelchair and I made it fit. And I think we do that in our relationships too, where we will take ourselves apart to fit in this trunk. Man. And then it's like we close the door, the trunk, and we're like, it fits. It's perfect. But then you look at like, am I going to do this every day when I go to the grocery store? Like,
hell no.
How is this going to work for me? Something has to change. And then we either change ourselves or we're wanting to change the car. And we're not talking about cars, really. We're talking about people.
Yeah.
So then where are you at?
And there's a reason I said the word safe, and the reason I used the words that I did, because that applies to all of us as human beings. Like, what do we really want in most of our relationships, regardless of what type of relationship? We want to feel safe. We want to feel accepted, seen, heard, loved, and valued.
Yeah. And for me, as someone with a brittle bone disease, safety is like forefront of my mind with even every step that I take. And I talk a lot about safety when I talk with people with disabilities and dating, and even without disabilities, like going to meet strangers, that's what everyone is until you meet them. Then we're best friends like we are. But safety is so especially paramount for people with disabilities. And so what really resonated with me, I was digging around in your content, and I saw something that you had said about like, oh, they don't know how to fall yet, in reference to someone else who had fallen and was like crying, and you were like, oh, I'm like an expert faller. So I loved that, because I feel like for myself, it's always this avoidance of falling. And it's almost like that spilled over into my dating life, where it was like, I'm not going to fall. I'm not. And I had all these boundaries and I had all these walls up for safety. And then it wasn't until I like really put myself out there and realized, like, you don't have to fall. It doesn't have to be this like the love, this craziness that we see on TV, because that's what society tells us. And it tells us a lot about disability too.
Mm-hmm.
We can rest into love. We could be safe in love. So
Man, so I had a couple people ask some questions, uh, and I'm curious because I think this is a good point where we're at to bring one of them up, and it was, how do I? I'll pull it up so I get it
yeah.
exactly right. I don't
And
want.
while you pull that up, I did want to say that um, there was a movie, speaking of like what society tells us about love and disability, and it was something recent, and it was a Lifetime Christmas movie
Oh gosh.
with this past Christmas season, holidays and everything, with Ali Stroker. And I have not seen it yet, but it is now on my list of things to see because I'm like, let's see what you did here, Lifetime. I want to see what it's all about.
Yeah. Before I go on to the question, that made me think of the movie Crip Camp, the documentary, and that was an interesting part in the movie that they touched on a lot, was the idea of sex. And like, I just laugh when they're like, "Yeah, we all got STDs at the camp." Like,
Well,
and
and that's
yeah, go
another
ahead.
thing. People with disabilities are often not having the conversation of safe sex. They are left out of the conversation about STDs because it's assumed that people with disabilities are not having sex, which is obviously not true. So, sex education is such a very important part for any human being. And I think that speaks to why
Yeah,
and the
and
safety.
that was the idea behind this individual's question was,
Mm.
what can we do? I think I know the answer, but what can we do to start to shift that narrative that people without disabilities assume that we don't think about, have, or want sex in our lives?
So just so the thought of, assuming that everyone isn't viewing us as a sexual being anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that really when we say things in all or nothing, that's usually not the case. So we can kind of start there. Like, is this an all or nothing thought? Am I using like black and white thinking here? Or is there, again, that possibility that I'm wrong and there's something gray where people might not know if I can? I know that I've gotten that question a lot. I'm sure many people like,
Yeah.
if people aren't thinking that we're not having sex, they're wondering like, well, can they? And if they can, how? Like, how is this happening? And there's a lot of questions that are there. And so I think the part of shifting the mindset is to recognize that there's also a number of people that are out there that are with people who have disabilities, you know? So just because that conversation maybe wasn't had with you, either sex education wasn't had, or the birds and bees conversation wasn't had, or, when you get together with family, they're not asking for updates on your dating life, that doesn't mean, the way I interpreted it when I was younger was that like that's not for me. It just means that they don't know what to say. Maybe they don't know if it's possible. So that's why it's so important that we're talking about it here, because
Yeah.
obviously it is possible. There's a number of people that have children. That's a
Mm-hmm.
very good indicator that sex has happened.
Yep.
Right? I mean,
Absolutely.
so I think that we have to start looking at who's in our circle, maybe getting some people in our circle to show us what's possible, and connecting with other people who have what we want, you know?
Yeah, I think that's huge. I think from just a human perspective and not talking about sex relationships, I think that's another thing that we don't often see as the community is we just, again, going back to that modeling, when we don't see it, that shred of possibility is like made even smaller. And
Mm-hmm.
like what you said, finding somebody who they may not have the same disability as you, but
Mm-hmm.
finding somebody with a disability that has what you want in an area of life, like it just explodes
Yeah.
that possibility. Uh,
Yeah.
I remember a guy one time, we were working in a center for individuals who have intellectual disabilities, and he had cerebral palsy just like me and uses a wheelchair. And I remember him talking about wanting to go to see family in Texas. And he said, "But I can't because I can't fly because I'm in a wheelchair."
Same thing.
Yeah.
And what did his face look like when you told him you can fly?
Yeah, I said, this is what I said. I said, well, the good thing is I know somebody else who uses a wheelchair. And guess what? They can move a lot less than you. And I flew with them. And it was possible. There were there were plenty of adaptations that happened along the way in that trip, but what I can tell you is it's 100% possible. And guess what? We even happen to fly exactly where you want to fly.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's
It's life-changing to hear that for someone, right?
yeah,
And I think that, you know, man, that's such a life-changing shift that you might hear someone say like, "Oh, I know this one person," but like then actually meeting someone who's closer to or similar to you and
mhm,
seeing the things that they've done and where they're at can be just life-changing. Every biannually, the OI Foundation will host a conference where people are just everyone with OI are able to, get together. And doing that growing up was so life changing for me because, like you said, you're seeing people that are just like you who have relationships and oh look, next time you go, oh, they've got a family, or oh, they just became a doctor. It's like,
mhm,
oh, I and then based on level of severity, even that can be an important shift. Like, okay, well, you can do it, but what
yeah,
about me? Like, I'm over here, maybe I don't have the same. But then it's like, oh no, I've got like 10 people over here that also do that, so stop getting in your own way. um
yeah,
and that's not to say that things don't get in our way, because they do.
yeah.
And but I think that we find ways to get around them, or we can, not.
Um, I've got just a couple more questions, and this kind of made me think of something that I talk about, and I love your perspective on it, and it's this idea of when we get in our own way, often we give so much power to the disability and the limitations of the disability, and we become this angry disabled person. That's what I like to say is where let's say you and I are talking and we're trying to get to know each other, and then you said, "Hey, I don't have time to talk," or uh, "I can't talk right now," and so for me, it's like, "Oh, I just got rejected," and oh man, you don't like me because my disability. And man, oftentimes it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with your asshole or like all the other human aspects to all this. But I'd love your insight on what you think about that as a concept.
Oh man, yeah, and that really speaks to how our traumas can get in the way too. And that was something really big for me to recognize too, that and I think sometimes people hear the word trauma and they're like, well, I haven't really experienced trauma. Like, I know a lot of people who had some trauma, but it could be just perceived trauma, like when you're just not feeling safe and things are wild and going on for you. And I think the more we shine light and sit with, we kind of kick things off. I talked about like the light and the dark. um, the more we kind of explore we hide in the shadows, I think the more information we can get and the more acceptance can come, so that these things don't become our reasons why people really aren't wanting to be in a relationship with us. Um, because yeah, who wants to be with someone that feels that way? It's hard to be with someone that feels that way. And it's like, when I say trauma, we really want to get some healing around it, not just a band-aid, so that we can I always talk about how so we can use our wound but heal it, so that we're talking from our scar, not this like gaping open
Mm,
bloody mess of what trauma kind of is, and the chaos it creates, and the lies that we can tell ourselves because of it. And until you get that healing by having these conversations, even, just at that type of a level, or working with a coach or a therapist, or even just journaling, reading, like the different things you do to work on yourself, connecting with the body, so that it's not just mental. Maybe as someone with a physical disability that deals with pain, I had a big disconnect from my body to where I wasn't even listening to it. Like,
yeah.
I couldn't even tell you what was going on, because I had become so skilled at ignoring pain, ignoring. And
Yeah.
I think we do that too. So then we're also closing off our intuition when we meet people. Then we're dating the wrong people. Surprise, surprise. So it's all a big cycle and it's all tied together. And I think if we're going to acknowledge we might be wrong, and then we're going to want to take that step in acknowledging that someone might be able to share their perspective with us, and they might have a little bit more clarity because of all of this stuff over here, and then we're going to get clear on what we're looking for. We also, we're looking out here, we also have to look in here to see, okay, like, what also is getting in my way too. And I think we can do that very skillfully.
That's so interesting because I don't think I hear a lot of people talking about the aspect of pain, but you're so right. When you deal with it 100%, like I'm sure both of us are in pain and managing pain right now in this moment.
Mm.
And it's like, wow, you do become very skilled at shutting something down without even realizing that it's happening. It just became a natural response to protect you from the pain. That's so interesting.
And then if you're blocking off your body, it also affects your ability to experience pleasure, because you have disconnected with feeling. So
Hmm.
then your sexual experiences are going to be different too. You're not going to experience pleasure as a whole as well. So it's all linked, all linked.
Man, I know so many people are. This is such a great conversation. They're going to get so much out of this. I've got a question based on that. So, if I am disconnected right now, and maybe I don't know it, but maybe us having this conversation, it starts to bring it to my awareness. What can I start to do as a practice to get more into my body.
Oh, wow. And that has been my journey for this past year, because I've again extremely disconnected from my body. I like to solve everything with my brain. I'm like, we could just figure our way out of this. We'll just think it through and we'll get through this. Like, we could figure it out. And it's like you're trying to go through this mess with only half of your tools. Your body is such an important part of your healing. So really, it's as simple as, like, when you said, I'm sure both of us are sitting here experiencing pain right now. I mean, not that I'm going to blame you for the pains I'm feeling now or anything, but I certainly noticed them all of a sudden, because I was able to say, huh, oh yeah, he's right. Let me go in my body and check in real quick.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, there it is. Oh, okay, let's get back. Let's get back. Right?
Yeah.
And I have done these activities with the people that I've worked with when they're experiencing, their own, either an anxiety attack, let's say, and it's like, okay, the thoughts are really going wild for you right now. Let's get into your body and establish safety. So these grounding techniques that you can do, where you're noticing, you're trying to get comfortable in a seated position, maybe even closing your eyes so that all the stimuli is not distracting you, feeling maybe the floor beneath your feet, and just inviting yourself to do that, to make the active choice of trying to do that, feeling the seat beneath you, and then doing like a full body check-in. Where is the pain, or what do I need to be paying attention to that maybe I've been ignoring for the past however many years? And how are those, and even if it's not pain, it could be just tension, that really could get in the way. And we're walking around or rolling around and just experiencing our day without acknowledging that these things are happening.
Yeah.
And we're like 90% unconsciously going about our day, really. So taking the time to be more conscious with our body can be just life changing.
So you guys have a lot of homework to do from this conversation, and it's a lot of checking in. Like, I think, to stick with our analogy, right? I think this conversation is really turning it on the check engine light.
I love it. I love it.
So
Yeah. And if you're a type of person that just kind of drives around with those lights beeping at you for quite some time, guilty as charged. Yeah, we do that. It's like, oh, check engine. That's a little bit more critical than the, like, oh, my gas is getting low. Oh, it's really low now,
yeah. And we still, like you said, we still at some points do it. We drive it till it the wheels fall off and
Mm.
all that stuff. And then you're sitting like, well, why in the hell did I get in this position? Because I didn't pause, I didn't do the check-in like we're talking about. Is there anything that you would like to talk about that we haven't discussed to this point?
I would just encourage anyone who, like you said, is still not convinced of the possibility that love is for them, um, to really start at least thinking about the possibility. What would that look like? You know, I think if we can shift into a, like, can I try to picture it? And if you can't picture it, surrounding yourself with people who have what it is that you're saying is supposedly impossible for you. And if this is seeming like something that you want, get support. I think another thing that we probably get in our own way about, and I'll speak for myself, I hate asking for help.
Yeah.
I hate it. And yet here I am, helper to the core for other people. Why is that? Right? So for me to say like, oh, I can't ask for help is to also say, well, Michelle, what you do is like a crock, really. Like people don't need you. And I don't
Yeah.
think that's true at all. So if that is true, then the other must be true. I must need help. And I believe that we all need each other. It's not, you know, it's not anything that isn't true. We all need each other. So if you're looking for growth in this arena, and maybe you've sat with this belief for quite some time and you need help making that shift, then get that help. Get that help. There are peers, there are coaches, there are therapists that are trained specifically in doing so. I'm certainly one of them. I would love to help anyone that's like, I'm stuck. I'm stuck. I lost all four tires. I'm out in the middle of nowhere. I think I have to abandon the car. And I'm like, okay, let's get you back on track here. You
Yeah.
know? So yeah, just asking for help and maybe even looking at like, why is that hard? Take it a step further with that.
Yeah. Because I would say in the user manual, it says weakness. I think
I
that's what
love
it
it.
is. Um, this has been amazing. So I know I said this like 5 questions ago now, but so I want you to complete this prompt for me. And then I've got one question after that. Love is.
Nathan, it's like you've got these questions, like you've been doing this podcast for a while and this isn't your first rodeo. You've got the good questions. Love is all of us. It is you. It is me. I think we are this thing that we are feeling like we don't have. So if we go within and we find it, we'll realize we don't have to be searching so hard for this thing. And the more we embody that and our authentic selves, the more the people who are meant to be in our lives are going to be magnets to us. And I think it all goes back to that.
Beautiful. Yeah, let's go out and create magnetism so that you find that person that's meant for you. You find your model on the lot. You drive it off, and it's a perfect fit for you. So, where can people connect with you?
And just before we even get to that, there might be multiple cars, there might be multiple models. So I think that that's important to acknowledge as well. If you are wanting one car, great. If you want to love a lot of cars, that's great too.
Yeah.
You can reach me, you can find me at drfynan.com. That's drfynan.com. And I'm offering a free clarity call, coaching session, connection making space, just so that if anyone is interested in seeing, is relationship coaching for me, is intimacy coaching for me, reach out and we'll chat.
Yeah, and just let Michelle know you're coming from No Label Live somehow, and
Yeah.
let her know that you heard the conversation. And then so the final question is, what does no label defines me mean to you?
I just think we're so much more than the labels that are either placed on us by other people or even by ourselves. And I think it can be kind of fun. I'm a sticker fan myself. It can be fun to try to label ourselves and explore identity in order to connect with other people. But that one label certainly can't be all that you are. So that's what it means to me.
Mm. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed this conversation, make sure and share it with a friend, because I know a lot of you are going to be watching. Whether you tell me or not, I know a lot of people are watching this episode. Um, and know that somebody in your life, it probably needs to hear some of the stuff that was dropped here. So share it, tag myself, tag Michelle in a post. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to either one of us, and we will be more than happy to give you our insight and our perspective on whatever your question is. And with that, you can catch another episode of No Label Live next week.